Hacks, the inside story of the break-ins and breakdowns that put Donald Trump in the White House. Brazile claims the DNC gave Hillary Clinton an unfair edge over Bernie Sanders, and reveals she considered replacing Clinton as the nominee after Clinton fainted at a 9/11 ceremony. The ticket I like most, she writes, was Joe Biden and New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. I felt certain that that combination would win the general election. And Donna Brazile, who has also been a longtime ABC contributor, joins us now. Welcome back, Donna.
Thank you, George.
Let's get some facts on the table first. As DNC chair, you didn't have the power on your own to replace Hillary on the ticket.
No, but as you well know, the charter of the DNC, as well as the convention rules, say that the chairperson shall, in consultation with the leadership in Congress and others. And so I had to put it on the table, George, because I was under tremendous pressure after Secretary Clinton fainted to have a quote-unquote Plan B. I didn't want a Plan B. Plan A was great for me. I supported Hillary, and I wanted her to win, but we were under pressure.
So how serious was this? You write that you got a call from Vice President Biden at the time. Did you mention this to the Vice President?
No, I did not. I mean, look, everybody was calling to see, do you know anything? How is she doing? And of course, my job at the time, George, was to reassure people, not just the vice president, but also reassure the Democratic Party, the members of the party, that Hillary was doing fine and that she will resume her campaign in the following week.
Do you still think that Biden and Booker would have won?
Well, you know, I had a lot of other combinations. This was something that you play out in your mind. But at the time, I was sitting next to Charlie Baker, who was her chief administrator.
Clinton's campaign.
That's right. And Charlie and I put down, and we had a lot of rumors coming. I had the former chair of the DNC calling me, Donald Fowler Senior, what are you doing? Look, the bottom line is she resumed campaigning. I went on TV to say that the campaign was back on track.
As you can imagine, there's been quite a reaction to this, including this open letter from the Hillary for America 2016 team signed by about 100 people. They say they were shocked to learn that you were considering this, and they go on to say, it is particularly troubling and puzzling that she would seemingly buy into false Russian-fueled propaganda spread by both the Russians and our opponent about our candidate's health.
Well, George, at the time, like I said, I talked with Charlie Baker, but as it relates to that...
Did you mention this idea to him?
No, I kept my own counsel. I'm the chair of the party, George, and I decided I wanted to be up front with someone inside the campaign, and Charlie was there sitting across from me. But let me just address what my former colleagues... I wasn't a staff person. I did not work for the Hillary Clinton campaign. I was not on their daily strategy calls. I had nothing to do with their data analytics. I was the chair of the Democratic National Committee. I was concerned about the entire party, not just the presidential, but the senatorial, congressional, and all of the other
From the sound of it sounds like you had a pretty dysfunctional relationship with the high command in Hillary's campaign. You even talk about telling them at some point, I'm not Patsy the slave.
Oh, George, let me tell you something. I could not control the purse string of the Democratic Party, and I had to figure out what was going on within the party, that the chair of the party, and remember, I wasn't just the chair, I'm also a vice chair. I was an officer for 8 years. 8 years under President Obama. I knew what was going on within the party. I become chair, and I'm trying to write a check for something. I raised the money, and they're like, you got to get signed off from Brooklyn. I said, Brooklyn? This wasn't a standard joint fundraising agreement. They had a separate memorandum of understanding, and I needed to break that. But in order to break it, I would cause a great commotion. So, yeah, I'm not Patsy the slave because I got sick and tired of people telling me how to spend money when all I was trying to do, I wasn't getting a salary. I was basically volunteering my time. And what I was trying to do, George, was to increase the level of enthusiasm and passion for Hillary Clinton and the rest of the ticket all across the country.
They also take exception to your description of the campaign right now as an antiseptic, sterile campaign inside the headquarters. A lot of people saying that is not the campaign they knew.
Well, you know what? They should take a page from Hillary's book, take a look inside of what they did last year, and then they should write their own book. Hillary wrote a book, which I enjoy reading, was part memoir. It was a history book. I love reading her book. If they don't like my book, don't buy it. But let me just say this. I have every right as a former chair of the party. Next year, I will celebrate almost 50 years in American politics. The Democratic Party is 170 years old.
I get that, but how do you respond? It's not just the Clinton campaign. You know, there's a lot of traffic on Twitter right now. I've gotten emails from Democrats, passionate Democrats, who say they feel betrayed by all this. Any regrets?
Do I regret taking on a job the second time in my life as chair of the party, cleaning up everybody's mess, taking all of the incoming, being unable to spend funds that I raised? Do I regret being on the road 100% of the time, being hacked? by the Russians, being harassed, getting death threats. Do I regret any of that? George, this was worse than Hurricane Katrina in terms of the emotional toll. But do I regret standing up for what's right, helping Hillary Clinton, helping the Democratic Party? And let me just say this, as somebody who went through the hacking experience, being able to tell the truth about what happened with the Russians, the attack on our government, do I regret any of that? No, I wish I could have done more, George.
But you think this helps for the book to come out?
Well, George, I mean, this is a lesson of 2016. If I released it next year, they would say, Donna, you're impacting on 2018. If I release it the following, Donna, you're impacting. George, for those who are telling me to shut up, they told Hillary that a couple of months ago. You know what I tell them? Go to hell. I'm going to tell my story. I want to tell my story, George, because this is a story of a young girl who started in American politics at the age of 9, who continues to fight each and every week of her life. I went down to Virginia last week to kick off the canvassing campaign. Nobody paid me to do that. Nobody, I'm not on the payroll, George. I care about my country. I care about our democracy. And I say go to hell because why am I supposed to be the only person that is unable to tell my story? Now, I've heard a lot of people tell me various things as well, but here's what they don't know. They don't know what it was like to be over at the DNC during this hacking. They don't know what it's like to bury a child. I did, Seth Rich. They don't know what it's like to protect the staff from further harassment. They don't know what it's like because the high command of Brooklyn, the people who were making the decisions, even for the DNC, they didn't come and work with us. They told us to shut up and basically let them win the election. And when we tried to intervene, we had to spend money we raised to try to help them win. And that was my job as chair of the party.
Pretty clear you have no regrets at all right there. You just mentioned Seth Rich, who, of course, was killed during the campaign. Did you feel under threat?
Every day, especially when Donald Trump, when Donald Trump would go out there and tweet. You know, look, I've worked on campaigns all my adult life. I've been called some of the worst things in America. But when Donald Trump would go out there and attack me, the threats were just unbearable. My house right now I got every different kind of security device. I had to get my home swept. I had to get the DNC swept twice. It was horrible.
As you know, he's tweeting again based on your book. Just the other day, he put out the real story on collusion is in Donna B's new book. Crooked Hillary bought the DNC and then stole the Democratic primary from crazy Bernie.
Well, Donald Trump likes to distract. I mean, what Donald Trump should be focusing on right now is protecting our country from being hacked again. He should be working with Congress to ensure that the American people will feel confident that we are going to have a good election season in 2017, 2018. Donald Trump loves to distract us and divide us. I'm not playing this game.
He wants an investigation in the Department of Justice.
Well, I think he needs to look in his own house before he tries to clean up someone else's house.
Do you think this joint fundraising agreement was anything illegal at all?
As I said at the time, George, I did not like the fact that there was an additional memorandum that spelled out what the Clinton campaign could do in exchange for bailing the Democratic Party. I give Secretary Clinton credit for bailing the Democratic Party out because we were in debt.
But I've seen the email traffic, and it appears from at least one email that the Sanders campaign was offered the exact same term. They could also negotiate an agreement of their own if they raised more money. They chose not to.
The Sanders campaign set up a joint fundraising account as well, but they chose not to put money in it. But they also chose to allow the DNC to control what little funds they did put in it. This was a separate, what this was an additional memorandum.
Right, but they were offered that same thing. Here's the email. If you're raising significantly more than the amount to cover the voter file for the DNC staff would be happy to chat with the Sanders team and come to an understanding about the best way to use those funds to prepare for the general election at the DNC. So they were offered a similar chance.
George, when I found out the reason why the chair of the party, the chair of the Democratic National Committee, could not spend the funds, I found the agreement myself. This is the agreement they put out. This is the agreement I found. And what I tried to do, George, was to work within the parameters of this agreement so that I could hire staff, so that I could spend money that we raised, and so that I could help Hillary and Tim Kaine and all of the other Democrats win. As for any agreements or side agreements they had with Senator Sanders, I've never seen that before, George.
Do you agree with Elizabeth Warren that the primaries were rigged?
I don't think she meant the word rigged, because what I said, George, as you well know, after I left this show back on July 24th, I said I will get to the bottom of everything. And that's what I did. And I called Senator Sanders to say, I wanted to make sure there was no rigging in the process. I'm on the Rules and Bylaws Committee. I found no evidence, none whatsoever. The only thing I found, which I said I found the cancer, but I'm not killing the patient, was this memorandum that prevented the DNC from running its own operations.
You also write about that email where you appear to share questions with the Clinton campaign from a debate on CNN. We're showing it up on the screen right now. And in the past, you said that sending those emails was a mistake you'll forever regret. But in the book, it seems you're still not sure you sent this email.
Well, George, when you're hacked, look, I have 7 email accounts, maybe more. When you're hacked and you don't know, I'm the only person in America that had to go and look and say, okay, where is it? Where is it? I knew I'd sent emails, of course, George.
So you're not denying that you sent this email?
George, I'm not. First of all, I said straight up, I said, look, if this was sent, I know why I sent it. I apologize. I spent the entire month of August apologizing for the leaked, hacked emails, which is a crime. And so far, no one has been charged with a crime. But I've apologized. I said, I'm sorry. But here's what I also say in the book that I thought was very helpful to the reader, and that is to tell people during this time when we were under pressure to add more debates to the schedule, I went out to get more debates. Well, CNN was the beneficiary of those debates, but I wanted more diversity. I wanted more diverse voices. And yes, I wanted issues that people cared about. People were, as you recall, Black Lives Matter. They were marching in the streets. They wanted us to address criminal justice reform. And yes, when CNN agreed to go to Flint, Michigan, we wanted to have a conversation about the water crisis. All of that's in the memo. All of that's in the book.
Did you ever share questions with the Sanders campaign?
Let me tell you something, George, and I also have in a book that even on occasions when I knew the topics on ABC, I even talked to the Republicans about what the topics would be. I shared with everybody because you know what? I wanted the best information possible. The second thing is I didn't want the candidates shocked by the nature of the questions. For the first time, we were going to go beyond, talking about the usual issues that animate Democratic primaries, and we were going to talk about issues that concern Black Lives Matter.
You have some tough words for the leaders of your party in here in the book as well. And here's what you write. We've had 3 Democratic parties, the party of Barack Obama, the party of Hillary Clinton, and the weak little vestige of a party led by Debbie that was doing a very poor job getting people who are not president elected. These 3 titanic egos, Barack, Hillary, and Debbie, have stripped the party to a shelf for their own purposes.
Well, over 1,000 state legislative seats. And by the way, I take responsibility too, George. I'm a Democrat. We've lost thousands of state legislative seats. We've lost gubernatorial seats. But we have an opportunity on Tuesday in New Jersey and Virginia to fight back, to regain some of the lost ground over the last 10 years. And that's what I'm hoping will happen. Every voter should know out there that their vote counts. Their voice must be heard. I encourage them to get out and vote next week in Virginia and New Jersey and later on in Alabama, where I'll be in Alabama by the end of the month. It's important that everybody votes. Yes, I take a hard hit at people within the party because I love my party, I love my country, and I'm going to continue to fight for it.
Continue to fight for it. And are you confident now that the Democratic Party can be fixed, and what's the most important thing it needs to do?
Well, first of all, I am very confident that Tom Perez is leading in the right direction. We have a unity commission that is going to examine all of the things I raised about the primary contest and the caucus system. We have Keith Ellison and others who are energizing the grassroots. The party is making a substantial investment in the states. And, George, one of the things that bothered me especially in the Patch of the Slave chapter, I got some controversial chapters, I understand, but anybody from Louisiana know that I'm going to put some hot sauce on every page. And if it's not dripping with something that's hot and spicy, it's not me. But, George, what I'm most confident of is that we now have a party that is investing in all 50 states. Imagine you're the chair of the party. I'm from Louisiana. I am from the South, and I cannot get one poster outside of Florida, Virginia, and North Carolina to go home to Louisiana or Mississippi or Alabama. I can't send any resources to those states. I'm the chair of the party. And by the way, I didn't ask to be chair, George. When I left your show on July 24th, I thought I was getting ready to go out and have a nice brunch. Instead, I was called to say, Donna, we need you to step up again. And I did.
It has been some year. Donna Brazile, thanks very much.
It's always a pleasure, George.
The following is special programming from WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network. Hacks, the inside story by longtime Democratic Party chairperson, strategist, virtuosi, Donna Brazile. out of Louisiana, the state that is both, as they say, prominent for Cajun cooking, Creole cooking, hot sauce, and politics in the tradition of Huey Long. So you have to understand a little bit about where Donna Brazile came from, the environment that she was in, riding on the back of the bus out of Kenner, Louisiana, going to Louisiana State, same place that, well, no, he went to Louisiana. Anyway, wherever. I was thinking of Terry Bradshaw. But the whole situation is there in Louisiana, very volatile around New Orleans, the Big Easy, jazz, etc., Louis Armstrong. All of those influences cemented Donna Brazile. Donna Brazile had a long-standing relationship with the Democratic Party. She had been organizing since she was 9 years old. So she'd been in it over 40 years. And she understood the grassroots of a campaign, having worked in a campaign and having observed politics. We first encountered her at the on the backstage of the 20th anniversary of the March on Washington. She was one of the speakers, a youthful speaker at the time, and the man that preceded her was the minister from Chicago, Louis Farrakhan. They were on the back of the program. But nonetheless, Louis brought down the house, and Donna was part of the cast. And she has continued to be part of the cast. And in the 2000s, she was the campaign manager, not the first, of Albert Gore of Tennessee, the man that actually won the 2000 presidential contest. That was a little over 500 votes. So that was the tally they gave that separated he and G.W. Bush of Texas in Florida. G.W.'s little brother, as he called him, Low Energy Bush, was Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida at the time. Now, there were many things that happened in Florida. Ballot boxes were found from African-American precincts after the Supreme Court had shut down the election. Now, that was an interesting situation because at that time, social media was at its infancy. There was a talk on the right that having, say, Billy Graham go to Washington and cement the right-wing opposition in case Al Gore was elected president. Because the popular vote, Al Gore won the popular vote, as did Hillary the Monster Clinton in 2016. But it was a totally different situation with Al Gore. Al Gore had an outreach in September after Labor Day. He was on the river, on the Mississippi River, while people were on holiday, out with the people. He was a man of the people. And he was able to galvanize that vote out there. And that was in the aftermath of serving in the Clinton administration for 8 years. He finally separated himself away from them and moved to their left. If you recall, the Clinton administration was a conservative, down-the-middle type of administration, more built on the Arkansas model than built on a national model, the kind of model that presidential candidates like Harry S. Truman ran on. FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And if you go forward, Harry S. Truman out of Independence, Missouri. They all ran on progressive tickets. Bill Clinton, however, ran on a ticket of a little of this and a little of that and a lot on welfare reform and various other reactionary measures, putting Sister Sojourner in her place, so to speak, playing to the hopes and fears of the same people that D.J. Trump was able to activate. As Louis Farrakhan would say, let's let it all come out. clearly what happened. A Tarzan Jane campaign, more or less. And at that time, the DNC was run by these right-wing operators that forgot about the progressive politics primarily and went to the type of politics, a disguised sort of identity politics in reverse. That was at a time that you could take the African American vote pretty much for granted. Ron Brown, incidentally, our own Ron Brown, was a campaign manager for Clinton, and Clinton finally admitted that he would have not been, had not been for Ron Brown. Ron Brown, of course, was a New Yorker and understood how to deal in the streets of politics. A different kind of situation. Whereas if we move forward to 2016, 2015, where Donna's book kicks in, basically where she became the interim chair of the Democratic Party after Swartz had left there. Debbie Weissman had been, as they say, dethroned from the Democratic Party. She took over. But the Democratic Party, the Democratic Central Committee, the DMC, was still a relic. When Barack Obama out of Illinois, the then senator, ran, he had to build a parallel organization because that organization was the remnants of what Clinton and his conservative operators had left behind. But it was depleted. Their foot soldiers were tired, had sore feet, basically speaking, at the time. So Senator Obama rebuilt the party, reorganized the party, re-energized the party, went downstate to Illinois, never will forget that, announced his candidacy at the old state house there, and from there he was off and running. But no one gave him a chance because he was up against the establishment candidate, Crooked Hillary, and Crooked Hillary had the chairs, even in Iowa. She had the money, she had the name, everyone knew who she was. But the problem was she had a ragtag organization, it was totally dysfunctional, and it started to show when she was up against a candidate that actually could attract people, had a magnetism that she didn't have. In the day that she ran campaigns, and some of the Democrats ran campaigns, lackluster campaigns, type campaigns that were just out there. Started that sort of stuff after Jimmy Carter left. And incidentally, Jimmy Carter would have won that election had not been for America held hostage and the Iranian crisis at the embassy. But in 1984, they ran a dull candidate that had been around a while called Walter Mondale. Well, Walter Mondale was so dull that he literally could not activate a telephone booth with him in it. Quite literally, being the only one in it, that is. He couldn't excite them. So then the Democratic Party went back to a model that in 2007, 2008, Hillary Clinton, a name, yes, but not an exciter of any kind of base, not someone that would enlarge the party. She was good for exciting the people that were all there, like old Al, I can't think of his last name right now, but anyway, that ran that centrist, they call it, committee. Now, there are people out there that believe, well, okay, America is a right of center country. Jerry Pippin and I used to talk about that. It may be right, but that center can be moved, as political scientists say, on the scale a little more to the left. And as we observed from the Democracy Conference at the University of Virginia's Center for Politics, some of the people are still in that mode. Many of the speakers there, at least the first panel, and if you go to Friday Jobber. We have them on the show, at least from the crystal ball standpoint. We obviously don't have them speaking personally, but we evaluate them each and every week that they have a column out there. But this particular production was live streamed, and we covered it, provided some commentary. They had a number of panels, but the panelists were people from the middle of the American politic. Not saying that some of the analysis was not dead on as far as analysis go, yes, but the people given the analysis. And this was a big problem in 2016. You can't go beyond the ideological underpinning. Now, there have been various things said about Donna Brazile and hacks and what her motivation was. Did she write the book at the right time? As Ms. Brazile said, if she would have written the book later, they would have accused her of affecting 2018 and perhaps 2020 if it had been beyond that. But she put it out about the time of Virginia. Now, Virginia is a very interesting case study in itself. You had a candidate from the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia with an accent that was Southern, no doubt about that, Nathan. But at the same time, there was an understanding. Incidentally, he ran against a Bernie-supported candidate. But the progressives, the Bernie people, recognized right away where the eye on the prize stood. There was a number of things going on there, but they had to get him over the finish line, and they did, by about 9 points. People came out in the areas around Washington, D.C., the followers of O.J. Simpson, that is shorthand for African Americans, came out, and they boosted their turnout. Whereas in the districts, the rural districts of Virginia, they were able to follow a similar model that the governor in Minnesota followed, Mark Dayton. But he went to the southern part of the state, which is the more conservative part of the state, and got what he could get out of that area and was competitive there. Then he went north to the northern part of Minnesota, where the Democratic base started out, and was able to do much better there than most Democrats had run statewide for governor. And then he came into his base in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. In a very close race, however, took it on home and got over. So the same thing basically happened in Virginia. That model will work. But in Virginia it was a little bit different in that in many of those legislative districts in the Commonwealth, the House of Delegates, lower house, the Democratic Party, the Bernie wing, ran candidates people had never heard of, and they were able to capture the seats. And last time I looked, they were virtually about 50-50. Now, that can happen when people's decide that they are going to pull themselves up and move on with the program. Now, the same thing out in Montana with Mr. What was his name there? Krish. Hope I'm pronouncing his name right there. Anyway, a musician. And the right was able out there. In fact, on the week it was, we talked about Gilliford and literally beating up a reporter. And then, of course, he lied about it. Now, he was elected to Congress, but Krish didn't have the money in there to do it. And nationally, the money did start to pour in. But there were some other things from a working man that had a struggle and had went through some bankruptcies, etc., had some injuries on the job, and had done some performances to keep himself afloat, literally. But he had not set out to be running for Congress. It was a little different kind of situation. Whereas if we go to the Clinton campaign, this is a person that had been preparing forever to run for president, literally. and ran in 2008, so that meant she was an experienced candidate. She was a known quantity. And in 2015-2016 race, she ran basically with the same apparatus that she ran in 2008. Now, it was a little bit different, that some things were worked out, but basically the same type of obstruction from the same ideological stance. Now, it didn't work in 2008. She was not the type of candidate. And by 2015-2016 campaign, she had already had another history. You're talking about basically 8-9 years later. And she had not prepared well. She had the Hillary server, which people don't understand the difference between a server that is basically what she had. She had a box in a house that was co-located. Yes, there was a server there, but it was not in actuality a server as such. More or less, it was what we call in information technology a fetch model. In other words, it fetched emails in from a co-located server someplace else. But that really didn't matter. Had she been like a General Powell, Colin Powell, and had an AOL account, which I think she did, or some other account, a Gmail account, or what have you, in addition to State Department accounts, they would have been, as young people say, no problem, period. Had she not spoken behind closed doors to these Wall Street groups, just so she could get a greedy little hands on a fee, she still got the fee. But the whole point was, why you don't. One of the basic things, and Donna Brazile obviously understands this, you don't create situations for yourself if you know better. Now, she was not like Mr. Kreesh out in Montana. He wasn't planning on running for office. She was. And being an astute politician, the monster has been around forever, would have known better than to do something of that nature. And there have been various reviews of Donna Brazile's book, Hacks. Look at it a little bit here. I look back at some. The Guardian is much more favorable. And let's first go over here. The attack dogs were out at the Atlantic, some of her loyalists, in the form of David Graham. And he starts out here, let's see what he's saying. A new book out, Hacks, was released with excerpts, of course, in Politico. The theme being it was rigged for Hillary the Monster Clinton over Bernie Sanders. By September 7th, I found my proof, and it broke my heart. Yet on Tuesday, and see, this is where Donna Brazile appeared on CBS News, and she said she found no instances of rigging. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, why things changed. The claim of rigging made and withdrawn is the buzziest of several stories from the book, some of which I wrote about last week. This is him talking. One reported about the idea that Brazile plotted to remove Hillary Clinton. She didn't plot to. It was a part of the, if you go back in history to Dr. McGovern's campaign, Thomas Eagleton out. He was removed unceremoniously from the ticket because he had had electroshock treatments, period. Now, this was after her fainting spell. She was going to put lunch bucket Joe Biden in there. Now, this fool Cory Booker, was a Twitter king that was dethroned by DJ Trump. It would have been a mistake. The Post wrote that Brazile had seriously contemplated setting in motion a process. That was correct. Clinton, but it was difficult to tell from the book just how serious to take it. See, this is they set it in motion, and no doubt, as Donna said in the book, that it didn't originate with her. There were people after the fainting spell and various other missteps by Hillary Clinton had seen the handwriting on the wall and the server, etc., that she could lose that election. Now, these were people that were savvy from the outside. There was talk of that. People were calling in. They were very, very nervous about it, period. And then, of course, there was the agreement, this semi-secret agreement there. that was signed between the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. Now, this Graham points out that was disclosed to the FEC. Well, yes, it could have been, but you have to understand that things that are disclosed to the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, are not necessarily knowledge to other people. And the rank and file, and this is where he talks about it there, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz had informed the party officials the loan. No doubt that happened. But what you also have to look at here, the fix was in. There was no doubt about the fix was in. And Donna's book just reinforced what we in the Bernie campaign saw at the time, and anecdotal information was coming out, and also how the primaries were run, because the monster controlled and her minions controlled the machinery of various state parties. And when this happens is people that run those state parties are beholding to whomever their masters are, because they want to curry favor from Iowa to California, etc., to New York with the candidate. Because the pundits, the polls were saying, well, there's better than a 50-50 chance, 60-40 chance that Hillary Clinton will win this contest. Period. Our model did not say that, however. And you see these people, and also this not only the structure of the DMC, but at the same time you had various elements from the Obama campaign that were there. A lot of these people had left the campaign and ran off to various places to get into so-called private industry as quick as they could get on a plane to get the hell out of the place. Even David Axelrod, he sort of retired to Chicago to write high funds, I suppose. But they were all embedded with the campaign. But the realization should have came upon these people, at least the Obama people, that Hillary Clinton was not Barack Obama. There's no doubt about that. A different kind of candidate with a different type of history. When the then Senator Obama came on the stage, he had given a speech at the Democratic National Convention, and Donna talks about that. And of course, that was encouraged even by Hillary the Monster Clinton at the time, because she didn't think that he'd have an opportunity to ever run for president, at least not when she was running. He would not be in the House, as they say, or occupying that space. Nor did she think America was ready for an African-American president. And there are segments of America never got over it, and that's why DJ Trump's sitting in the White House now and not her. But it goes beyond that. That all these people that were meeting together, the structure there, the fundraising structure, everybody else, even Harvey Weinstein. They were all out there on the Hillary. Remember when they was ready for Hillary? We had a big debate on the web, or the net, or whatever you want to call it, the internet, the net, whatever. That the country was not ready for Hillary. And one prominent person, won't mention the name now, was in the ready for Hillary situation. And as they say, when the fat lady sung, about the only thing she could do was send out a greeting to us saying F you. Anyway, neither here nor there on that one. But the situation came down. Now, one other thing Donna Brazile put out, very, very important, was a matter of Sepp Rich. Now, this whole thing, and she does spend some time talking about the two bears, where the Russian Federation perhaps stood in this, the hacking that was all about that, and the medical center antiseptic atmosphere of what she terms as Brooklyn. Period. And, of course, this apologist here says, well, they didn't want the chair coming up with a different message. Who is this person? Graham. Well, different message. But back to Separich. Separich had worked at the DMC and he was murdered. His murder has not been, the murderer, I should say, has not been apprehended to date. And mysterious circumstances around it. They said, well, possibly robbery, but there were things on him that were not taken. So it all pointed basically to, and this is something here, getting into any conspiracy theories we don't. Graham accuses her of, Donna Brazile, of trapping in conspiracy theories. But at the same time, one can come up with anything without being necessarily conspiratorial. And that's the history of that. We don't have to go back to Foster and what happened to him, or even what happened to Ron Brown. There is evidence that Ron Brown was murdered, period. And whatever other machinations behind that, the only thing we know is that Brown's funeral, this was captured on video. Bill Clinton was walking, talking, and joking with somebody and smiling when he saw the camera. All of a sudden, he started wiping tears from his eyes. But this kind of thing is not a big thing. It's presenting different faces at different times, period. But it was catching up with them. They didn't take Bernie Sanders as seriously. Bernie, of course, was an independent, not even really a member of the Democratic Party. But he ran from a strategical and tactical standpoint, he ran in the Democratic primaries. But they didn't give him a chance. But he caught on. This was the age of the quote-unquote very unhappy worker, period. Now, yes, there were workers out there that went to DJ Trump because of a racist animus. You remember DJ Trump was one of the people that championed the birthers operation. And he tapped in. He tapped in the same racist core that old Rush Limbaugh tapped into when he encouraged his supporters to go out in Mississippi and in Pennsylvania and vote for Hillary to Monster Clinton. That was one of the most racist campaigns to date in 2008 that she ran. And then, of course, then came Sarah Palin, etc. And the Republicans were on private property. And they had caricatures of then Senator Obama with a noose around his neck, etc. And that continued after he was elected president. Was the most disrespected president in the history of this country. That was the most accomplished president. So against that backdrop, you had the people in Brooklyn. And this character, Muck, I don't know where they dredged him up from, but he was one of these characters that was there. And due to his own fixation on, or the pundits, that they had this great opportunity to win, better than 50-50 chance. They would have had a better than 50-50 chance than any other candidate. But they didn't see Bernie coming. They underestimated Bernie, and when Bernie started getting traction, they ran down south and got some Mickey Mouse primary wins down there. They even sent out poor old John Lewis to say that he'd been in the civil rights game and he never heard of Bernie. Well, John Lewis was down in the South when he wasn't demonstrating. He was probably picking cotton. But the whole point is he wasn't in Chicago, and then there came pictures of Bernie literally being carried off by the Chicago Police Department. And poor old John had to apologize that he'd been used by the monster, otherwise known as Crooked Hillary, to put out the lie. And that sort of fell apart. Younger African Americans saw through that and joined the Bernie campaign. But now she was still running up numbers in the South because she had the churches, she had what little organization was there. But it didn't matter. When you went to big prizes like New York, Bernie's people couldn't vote because it was confined to Democrats. Independents could not come in to vote, so she was able to win the primary. No doubt about it. And in states like Pennsylvania, didn't do her any good. She won there. But she won there in 2008. she played the same game that she played in 2008 that they ran on Bernie, and putting out, well, Bernie was a socialist, he was Jewish, etc. That all came from the Monsters campaign. So that was how they were playing it. But with Monk, they were playing the analytics game. The problem they had was they didn't have very good analytics. The old idea of, and this is basic to anyone that's schoolboy simple, you can predict how many votes you need. And that goes back to LBJ and down there in the Rio Grande of Texas. When they called in the votes, he knew exactly how many votes he needed. He called a fixer down there, and they got the votes. Well, now it's more sophisticated. You use analytics to say, for instance, if you move 5 or 6 votes in one direction, you win that precinct. It goes from precinct level on up to town, city, county, etc., state, and that's how basically it's done in a rough kind of way. You can do that, but you got to get you 5 or 6 votes to the polls. Well, in some of those areas that didn't happen. So as a result, you basically had a very close election in many of those states. Roughly a circumference of about 80,000 votes, a little more than 80,000 votes in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. But the monster didn't campaign in Michigan, and you have to understand your voters, especially dealing with the working class. You have to actually go there and assure them that you're going to give them a fair deal, real deal, some kind of deal. They didn't do that. They didn't go to Wisconsin. Should have been in Green Bay. The only reason to be in Green Bay is the papers there. Barack Obama, I believe, carried Green Bay. That's a conservative area in Wisconsin. Once in a while, we go through these states. But the whole thing there was they ran an incompetent campaign there out of, as she calls it, Brooklyn. And, of course, weren't helped by the FBI, James Carney. Old, what's his name, had some influence on FBI agents that were pushing him, the former mayor of, I don't hear much about him anymore either, of New York. He basically got on, I believe, on Fox or wherever he got on to Giuliani, and said that the FBI would come out with a caper on Hillary Clinton. Well, they did, but it was a Mickey Mouse charge to begin with. There was never evidence for criminal indictment there. To the slogan the Republicans ran, lock her up, lock her up. Well, she wasn't going to be locked up. They're still on lock her up, lock her up. But anyway, nonetheless, he came back as James Carney and said, well, there's not the evidence there. Boom. Then he makes a repeat thing by sending a letter to these committees in the Congress, saying that, well, we found some files over on Anthony Vina's computer because her right-hand person there, Minion Hanner, had used her husband's computer. Well, there's diagnostic software that you can very quickly find out if there are duplicate messages there, and you can run those willy-nilly. I don't know how many were there, but in a matter of minutes, not days, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, probably about 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes. And you immediately find that out. And they found it out and published what amounts to retraction. But it was already out there in the mindset of people. And also because of that bad modeling and a lot of the polling they saw, the Hillary was in the quote-unquote we call the margin of error. Now, in some of the swing states, and they came up short. I think it was like 18,000 or so, we'll say, and change in Pennsylvania. They could have pulled Pennsylvania there. About 10 or so thousand, a little bit off here. In Michigan, it wasn't very many. I mean, that was Wisconsin. It was fairly close. About 80,000 was the whole circumference of the matter. But again, this was a situation that We run two models here at Crash Analytics. One model had DJ Trump always ahead. Our slide route model, however, showed her coming up, and we had to look back and double the slide route model back, and then we made a determination she just couldn't get over the line, and we called the damn election. Anyway, that was part of it, but all this baggage being on there, and back to Donna's book, where Donna writes that it was basically rigged. Now, the fix, he since moved from the Washington Post over to CNN. He said was rigged before she said it wasn't. Well, what he says here is she was on CBS This Morning. Norah O'Donnell was there. She asked her about it, and the interim chair. And Bernie was a fair fight, believe it was, and what? She recalled in the same book she alleged in Hacks, the inside story, that put the DJ Trump in the White House, the DNC, and the Clinton campaign that cut an unfair deal that disadvantaged Bernie Sanders, no doubt about that, and more than that. Indian Politico was an excerpt from a book that is being released. I tried to search out any other evidence of internal corruption that would show that the DNC was rigging the system to throw the primary to Hillary. But I couldn't find it. Well, that was not the facts. Nonetheless, yet the exact opposite of what she told Norah O'Donnell. This is the first time in less than a week since Brazile's Politico article she's been caught contradicting herself. She wasn't contradicting herself. She was just giving the people the facts. Whether the primary was rigged, I found no evidence, none whatsoever. She responded, it's important to square those assertions with what she wrote in about the race in the book, unless, of course, you think things are unethical and provide evidence of a rigged system. Why is Brazile recanting the allegation made in her book even before the actual book is released? Well, we read the book. This is the fix speaking here. My educated guess is that she's succumbing to massive pushback at her by the Hillary loyalists, no doubt about it. A large group of former staffers, including Podesta. Now, we hadn't got to Podesta in his emails. It lays out the story. If you read his emails, you don't need to refer to what Donna Brazile said or what Donna Brazile didn't say, contradicting herself. Just read Podesta himself there. This is Robbie Monk, Jennifer Palmieri. Anyway, signed an open letter disavowing the claims. Well, why would they not? I mean, as far as Podesta, his emails are out there. You didn't need to disavow anything. It came from him, and when they were put out by the WikiLeaks organization, he couldn't deny it. He didn't deny it. The Jennifer Palmieri. It speaks for itself. They went on to say Donna came in to take on the DNC at a very difficult time. We are grateful to her for doing so. She is a longtime friend and colleague of many of us who has been an important insider in the party. Oh, when she took over, I'm sorry, a very difficult, no doubt about that. But you have to remember, and I think we said it on one of our broadcasts, that she was an inside person. I just saw Donna Brazile as one of the Clinton lackeys, basically, that took over the party because that was her assignment. And they probably seen the same thing. But yet Donna found some things were very, very troubling to her. The fix goes on to say Brazile had been a long-time party hand prior to taking over DNC in 2016. He talks about the Al Gore campaign and been an active player in internal politics for decades. And she says that she's receiving from her friends and former friends about the book, no doubt about that. The problem for her, however, is that the book is out and the words that she wrote in it can't be taken back. Already, Elizabeth Warren, in the wake of the allegations made by Brazile, has said that she believes the primary was rigged. Well, Elizabeth Warren has always believed the system is rigged, the overall system, and the Democratic Party trying to operate within a rigged system. And this is a problem. This goes back to ideology here, and it goes back to the whole centrist idea. Now, you have to remember, in 1992, 93, when Clinton ran his campaign, it was a different situation. They had come off of 12 years of Republican rule, 8 years by Ronald Wilson Reagan, and then George H.W. Bush, known now as a groper, the first President Bush. And he was adjusting to the new global economy, and excuse me, when they had him on no new taxes. Well, new taxes were necessary because the deficit problem that Reagan and his trickle-down economics had put into play. And also, you have to remember that in the 1992 election, there were three basic candidates: Clinton and Bush running for re-election, and Ross Perot out of Dallas, Texas, running as an independent. And that is the reason that Bill Clinton was elected, more so than the centrist position that he has. And people need to understand their history here. Ross Perot made the announcement in Dallas, Texas, that William Jefferson Clinton had been elected president. Why? Because he was directly responsible for his election as president. Had he not run, George H.W. Bush, the now known as the groper, would have been reelected, and then there would have been a totally different scenario out there. But nonetheless, Bill Clinton ran. Monica Lewinsky came along. They impeached Bill Clinton. He was, as they say, freed by the Senate, ran for re-election, trounced Bob Dole of Kansas, and they say the rest is history. But the Republicans were still running on these events, Lewinsky, Paula Jones, etc., the Clinton land deals, and whatever else. So this type of politics did not just start with DJ Trump. You have to understand that the history of it. And the Hillary was a part of this history. So they just brought out the same old clock there with Hillary Clinton. In fact, DJ Trump tried to point back to the affairs of Bill Clinton 20 years ago when they all cared about it. Nobody did. But this kept the base up. The put it in jail thing and various other schemes. And above all else, the racist campaign for 8 years against Barack Obama cemented the ties, period. And the Hillary focusing on DJ Trump, he could forget it because DJ said that he could kill somebody on Fifth Avenue. His supporters didn't care, which was true. And he's still dealing with the base now. But Virginia changed a lot of that, and now you have the new flamethrower himself in the picture of, or whatever, of Judge Roy Moore down in Alabama. Judge is running his campaign. It's a close campaign now. Some polls have it 5 points between the two. And some polls have Jones, who's the candidate down ahead of the ball game. And all these allegations came out on Judge Moore. It's the same old tape they played with Bill Clinton, but they were 40 years ago. Clinton's more recently and ever going. But the whole point is when you start, and this is one place where Moore is correct, when you start running campaigns based upon these kinds of things, in other words, these basic liaisons, 40 years ago, sexual liaisons, you get yourself into a situation that all kinds of claims are made. They're not substantiated. This is, we did a program on this, the Bill Cosby factor. You get into that, you get ingrained in it, and this is not the way to go. You need to stand on the issues. This is the reason Doug Jones is well advised to run his campaign on his issues. As far as what's happening with Judge Jones, well, you can leave that to old McConnell, the Republican Party, and those people. They're playing that up. They played it up. The media has played it up. You don't need to run attack ads on Judge Moore. Everyone has already done that. Everybody knows about Judge Moore and what he did 40 years ago with the teenagers. He's admitted that, but he dated teenagers. He has not admitted he dated a 14-year-old. But as the governor there, Ivey said, allegations are there, but Alabamians need to vote for the Republican Party. She was voting for Judge Roy Moore. Now, there are some undecided people out there. Will they go with Judge Roy Moore? From one that has been a pollster, and we understand that people many times lie to you, that a little difficult to say. It'll all be on turnout. It will. You can look at where the people in the rural areas, how many votes they have, and in the suburban areas around Birmingham, etc., and how many followers of O.J. Simpson turn out. If the followers of O.J. Simpson turn out in big numbers, and some of the suburban voters that are independents, supposedly, not evangelical Christians that turn out, Jones has a good chance of winning that election. But it's all in the air, and you look at some of these polls, and we'll take a look at them in a minute here as we finish this up. But again, the book came out there. It's all out there. It reaffirmed what we believe from the Bernie Sanders portion. So it goes to ideology, but it also goes to tactics, as in Virginia. There are no fools out there, and no one is on the turnip truck, as so to speak, there. But we understand and we recognize, as Bernie did, that in instances the Democratic machinery has to be used, as it was in Virginia, but they could have came up short. So therefore we turn our people out and put Nathan on notice that if he double crosses us, the wrath will fall down upon him. But the insurance policy was in Virginia is elect our people into the House of Delegates to keep the drum rolling. It's the same thing as happening in many of these states. Noticed even, 2 or 3 out in the very red state of Oklahoma, where Jerry Pippen used to hold court. He's dead now, but they say he came up out of the grave and snatched some of the right-wingers out and some others in. You start with the small things, the 50-state strategy. You're going to lose some races, yes, but that's in the preliminary stage. Eventually you'll start to win these races, and this is where progressive people go, whether it's with the Democratic Party or not. In spite of Perez and those people, he's still using the same old mucky machinery there that Debbie Wasserman Schultz used. And that is the big problem with the Democratic machinery. Now, you obviously have people out there that go with this right-of-center theory. But they need to look a little bit more at the line that political scientists use, that the country is moving a little to the left. And as far as party identification is concerned, DJ Trump proved that. DJ Trump was not a Republican. He only does that as convenience and ran on that. He could have ran as a Democrat, but he ran on that in poll after poll. Even DJ Trump's pollster admitted, and any pollster that's worth salt would admit, that had Bernie Sanders been the candidate of the Democratic Party, he would be in the White House right now, because some of the Trump voters would have crossed over, and the enthusiasm factor, that's a psychological thing. Donna Brazile talks about this, so she's on key. I know that some people out there wouldn't read a book. Well, that's their business whether they would read a book or not. But she was third on the New York Times bestseller list. That's I think the 26th of November. They have different lists now: hardback, paperback, ebook, this book, that book. Anyway, her book is read by a lot of people, and no doubt they disguise the numbers. She probably would have been number one. That's the reason we did this. particular one. You'll hear her interview with George Stephanopoulos after we leave here on the 19th of November, 2017. This is a Boston Red here. And let me just look very quickly at the polling and the situation in Zimbabwe. As you know, the president there, elect Robert Mugabe, and just looking at the BBC, just got the news that the ruling party sacks Mr. President Mugabe as the leader of the ZANU PF party. Here, he's supposed to do that as expected. Appointed the ex-president who had been in line. Let me see here. Ruling party is sacked as its leader officially. Has appointed the ex-president Emerson Mnangagwa. Had been fired. He's sacked has prompted an extraordinary chain of events. Mugabe is set to meet with military leaders later today, and a motorcade has been seen leaving his private residence. Now, I'm not sure this is okay, this Emerson character has been appointed the leader of the party. A big mistake here in our opinion. And said cheering crowds. One senior told him it was a dawn of a new age and Mugabe can go farming, whatever. The move is yet to be determined, but it's increasingly the presence of President Mugabe has been building over the past few days, period there. So we'll bring you up to date on that. We'll have, incidentally, special programming on this as things tend. Let me just look very quickly at the paper, doing a little live coverage here out of the Zimbabwe Broadcast Corporation. You'll find it in a minute here. Here we go. We'll get that up pretty quickly here. We always go to first sources. That was the BBC, and this will be the big story here. Well, they haven't got it up yet. Here we go. The story has just come across here. Oh, this is the youth movement. Anyway, they haven't. Emerson Mnangagwa is in. This is the youth movement. They haven't got it. Defining moment. This is at the Central Committee of the ZANU PF party. Oops. He's going so fast here that we're actually getting this from the broadcast. The ZANU PF Special Central Committee is on the way. The meeting is expected, and evidently, this will be updated that President Mugabe has been removed as chair of the party. No word on what happened to Dr. Grace Mugabe at this point in time. They are meeting later today with military leaders there. And this is all we have from them. We'll go quickly here to Reuters, and we'll use this actually as our update here until we get a better update coming in. Their headline is President Mugabe fired as ruling party expels Mugabe war veterans head. Anyway, was dismissed as leader of Zambia's ruling ZANU-PF party on Sunday in a move to force a peaceful end to following the military coup. He was replaced by Emerson Mugabe, the deputy. He sacked. Sources, special source, a meeting to decide his fate. He's been expelled. One of the delegates said, Mugabe is our new leader. His wife, who has been Harvard admissions there, were also expelled from the party. Speaking before a meeting of war veterans, said the 93-year-old was running out of time to negotiate his departure and should leave the country. Now, this is very unfortunate here. This guy was known as a crocodile. He's the former chief of state security. He is now in line. This is this Emerson in Mugabe, in Mugabe, I'm getting him right here, is now in line, and he had an interim post. Mugabe unity government will be focusing on rebuilding. Whether or not he'll be ever elected president is very, very difficult to say. Period. So this is the latest out of Harare, Zimbabwe. An unfortunate situation. We'll have a special program on this in a matter of hours, because what I want to do is wait till we sort out what's happening there. As a priest is also working on this. The approval numbers for DJ Trump, that was on Saturday, at 39 from Gallup. Now, on Friday, Grabbers poll had Doug Jones up by 5. There are conflicting polls out there. The Fox poll out on Thursday has Doug Jones up by 8. There's was another poll somewhere around here that had Roy Moore basically. Well, it was on Tuesday. Roy Moore was up by 6. That was a Fox Strategic Research Fox poll, and where was the next poll? Another Fox News poll. Wait a minute here. Has Doug Jones up by 8, Doug Jones up by 5. So that race is moving up there. Let me just look at one more thing. Going over to Alabama.com. The Alabama newspapers have endorsed Doug Jones. It says Alabama voters must reject Judge Roy Moore. We endorse Doug Jones. Now, this is Alabama.com, but they run the papers in Birmingham and various other places there. We'll have on the Monday morning quarterback updates on this, and on in Zimbabwe we will have a special on it later today. We'll also have WBRN an open source report later today. Have a lot of things to do later today. We're doing this at about 20 minutes of 9 Eastern Standard Time. This is Boston Red on the 19th of August, 2017. Good day, and have a good rest of your weekend, and also in the holiday season. Happy holiday there. And we have our Jerry Pippin birthday celebration coming up. Good day.